Hi, I've just seen, don't know if I call it a meme. It's more like a sort of link. It showed two people in a mask, probably from the 1918 pandemic. Now, it's no mystery that coronavirus right now it's staggering. I mean, we've had over 100,000 deaths in the UK, um, over 2 million deaths worldwide, and it's going to be well over that because a lot of countries are underreporting. Um, I'm solving problems in monetization. This is not here or there, but I just throw it in because they'll be looking at this. YouTube, you do not make it easy. When I go through the categorization, you ask, does your video contain controversial content? Well, I'm honest. I try to be as honest as possible, but I'm not dealing with the things that you're listing. So, whoever designed that, it's ridiculous. Anyway, this particular link had a list of a scenario of someone who was born in the year of in 1900. So at the age of 14, they witnessed the beginning of World War One. At the age of 18, they witnessed the Spanish influenza, which would go on to kill up to 50 million people. In 1929, at the age of 29, they saw the global depression. 1939, at the age of 39, the outbreak of World War Two. In 1950, the outbreak of the Korean War, and so on and so on. You get the idea. Then it gets into this thing about someone born in 1985 thinks their grandparents don't know how hard life is. Someone born in 1990 complains if they don't get their item on Amazon. I've seen similar things to this, and I reject it. This is why I'm a millennial. I was born in September 1985, and I'm a little bit sick and tired of some baby boomers, and it is mostly baby boomers who do this. Mostly, notice I'm not saying everyone. Um, I'm sick and tired of these caricatures of entire generations. Um, this is why it's just not true. With every generation, you get certain traits, you get certain influences. Um, so yes, it is true. There are a lot of young people who are influenced by woke ideology and who can be overly sensitive and quite politically correct. That's true. I'm not denying that. You can see it in universities. That's true. But what isn't true is to say that represents a whole generation. Now, I'm a millennial. I've been very critical of woke thinking. I'm critical of political correctness. But I consider myself quite young, and I'm quite happy to be a millennial. I don't sort of think, oh, I wish I was part of another generation. I'm quite happy to be a millennial. I might not like every single thing about my generation, but would I choose to be born at a different time from 1985? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. In fact, I like the fact I'm an older millennial. I wasn't born in 1998, but I don't even look down on people who were. I have a good American friend. She's in her early 20s. She's also a millennial, but she's a much younger millennial. And she's like me. She's pretty centrist minded. She's certainly not woke. She's not particularly right wing either. Um, and it just gets a bit tiresome to see this because it's lazy. It's just generalizing. So, consider this. Consider a young man born in 1985, 1987. 2006 comes around. He's in the army, right? There's a very strong chance if he's British or American or Canadian, he will do a tour of duty in Afghanistan, as was often the case. And there's a chance he could pay with his life or be severely injured, as in tragically too many cases was the case. A young man or woman born in the late 80s or early 90s, there's a very strong chance they will be, if they chose medicine as their profession, they would be working on the front lines as a COVID nurse. In fact, I've got a friend, she's about the same age as me, she is on the front lines. She's constantly exhausted, you know. Um, she really is in thick of this. This idea that all millennials are just moaning snowflakes is crude and it's wrong. Also, I've seen some older people, who are middle-aged, make huge issues out of small things. So let's just stop generalizing generations. I mean, with every generation, you're going to get certain traits. So we'll talk about the greatest generation, the people who came of age during World War II. And it is true that there was a sense of duty at that time. People were molded by the experiences of the war. Many people did honorably serve their country, either as service personnel or nurses or on the home front. Um, but there were less honorable people too. During the Blitz, for example, there were examples of robbers taking advantage of the blackouts because, it was an easy time to take advantage of that. They weren't exactly honorable or brave. So I must admit it annoys me a little bit. Um, I mean, the millennials are a huge generation. Numerically, we're the biggest generation. Actually, we are the biggest generation right now. We surpassed the baby boomers a few years ago in terms of numbers, at least in the United States. There is also a thing about generations that it's a bit um, counterproductive to kind of categorize people as generations because, I can think of baby boomers who I'm quite like-minded with, and I can think of other millennials that I have nothing in common with. So we shouldn't be too tribal regarding generations. I'm quite close to my parents. They're obviously baby boomers. So I think that it's interesting. I think generations are interesting, but I don't think we should get kind of tied down with stereotypes regarding generations. Incidentally, ah, I was going to name it was one of those well-known, not HuffPost, I forget the channel now. That's embarrassing because I've watched it many times. But it's a video about generations. It's interesting. And I don't like a lot of their videos because I think they are pretty woke. But this particular video, it just talks about generations and it talks about the things that define them. So, for example, baby boomers would be things like the Kennedy assassination, the moon landing, that sort of thing. The swinging 60s. Then Generation X, the end of the Cold War, millennials, 9/11, the rise of Barack Obama, Brexit and Trump, although that kind of overlaps with Generation Alpha. Um, but this is interesting stuff. You know, it is interesting, but you can't generalize in that way. So I'm a little bit tired of people running down my generation because particularly sometimes you even get millennials that do it. It's not I don't see what that achieves. You can't help when you were born. We're all individuals and we all are responsible for the way we think through things. And yes, there are influences there. Of course, there are. So, for example, a big one with my generation, particularly with older millennials, is we are the last people, the last generation, to remember a time before social media. I still remember the early 2000s when there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. I'm talking about like up to 2004. I think YouTube was 2005, Facebook was 2004. I remember when a German friend of mine at the time told me about these networks, and it was like a mystery. And now, of course, they're everyday life. So I still remember that time. I've got a little niece and three nephews. They will not know a world without social media. But I'm very proud of my niece. She's a very clever little girl, and I think she's only 9, but from what I can tell, she's going to be a pretty rational thinker. Anyway, yeah, in defense of millennials, let's just stop these. lazy, sweeping statements.